So, Pranav, good afternoon. Welcome to this Wales Regional Training Centre session, looking at the use of GarageBand to develop oracy through podcasting. So hopefully that's what you signed up for and you're looking forward to developing those skills as we go through today's session. A few things to note as we go through. There are no silly questions, so please do fire away with any questions that you have in the chat. I will do my best to monitor the chat and demonstrate as we go through and answer those questions as they come in. If there is anything, please do share in the chat any examples or uses that you've encountered as you're going through as well. And the session will be, as I already said, will be recorded and available to you via the Apple Regional Training Centre Teamspace, which I will share with you very, very shortly. So my name is Sean Powell. I'm an Apple Professional Learning Specialist here in Wales. I also work for the EAS down in South East Wales, and I also support Apple on a wider scale. And it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon to talk about some of the things that we're going to be developing our skills in and confidence with as well. First thing to note then and point you towards, if you're not already a member, this is the QR code to the Apple Regional Training Centre. It is a community space that is available via Hub to everybody. I popped the link into the chat as well if you'd like to jump in there. But this is where we'll be sharing all the recordings from the RTC sessions that we've done. So whether that's today or the recordings that we've had previously, they will all be available through there. And that's also a hub for conversation, for sharing good practice, for, potentially if you're looking to develop your skill set, presenting potentially one of these sessions in the future as well. So lots of opportunities in there. So if you haven't yet done so, please do click on that link in the chat, join that conversation, and it'll be a pleasure to have you on board within the RTC as well. Now, all of the resources, all the presentation resources that I'm sharing with you today are available via the Apple Education Community as part of the Learning Centre. Now, the Apple Education Community is a fantastic place and fantastic resource for getting ideas from practitioners, lots of pre-built presentations and example ideas of how you can use Apple technology effectively in your classroom in that kind of authentic and purposeful manner. So I've popped the link to the Learning Centre in the chat there. If you do want to go and grab any of the presentations, follow that link and it will take you to that resource. What you'll also be able to find in there as well is the ability to access the Apple Teacher Program. Now, those of you who've done the Apple Teacher Program before or are interested in it, essentially it's a range of badges that you can do that give you kind of Apple Teacher accreditation. You get one for iPad, one for Pages, Numbers, Keynote, GarageBand, and also then iMovie. Now, there's a range of kind of self-paced sessions that you can go through. And at the end of each of those sessions, then there is a multiple choice quiz that you can take. You get 5 questions. You need to get 4 out of 5 right to pass the badge. But if you get 3 out of 5 right, you can go back through and you can take the quiz again. So there's no need to worry about having to get it right and then not being able to do it ever again. 4 out of 5, and if you get it wrong, you can go back through. Now, what I would always do as you're going through is write down the answers that you get right, so that if you come back around to those questions again, you can just have a go and not have to think too hard about them as well. So Apple Teacher resources are all available there for you as well. Now, another resource that I think might be really useful to you and your colleagues in your school are a range of progression maps that have been created by the cross-regional partners in Wales. Again, I'll pop the link in the chat to you for you to have a little look at these. But essentially what they do is they break down some of the digital vehicles, digital elements for teaching and learning, and they break it down into kind of easy, manageable steps. It's almost a bridge between the DCF and application within the classroom. So as an example here, I've got the podcasting one on the screen. Each progression map for whatever vehicle that you choose will give you an overview of what that looks like. It will then provide you with some top tips and things to consider and think about in the classroom when you're teaching those particular skills. They then provide you with a range of suggested apps or tools that you could use. And all of these apps are either available via the Hub platform or they are free download from the Apple App Store. So no cost to you at your school, accessible for all schools and all learners across Wales. You'll also then get, for each progression step, a breakdown of skills. So what does a good podcast sound or look like, or animation or film? Here's some examples of things you might do. And then these are the skills that you're really going to develop and build at each progression step as you go through. So I'd highly recommend having a look at those resources, whether it's podcasting, film production, data handling. They are there to support you in the classroom with anything teaching and learning around digital competence. Okay, right then, hopefully you've got an iPad in front of you. You're going to need GarageBand downloaded to your device, so hopefully you've already got that accessible today. But this is what we're going to do. We're going to work our way through a very simple project on how to capture your voice, add some sound effects, add some music, and basically look at how we could do podcasting in the classroom. So across the next 45 minutes, we are going to look at how we can use GarageBand to plan our podcast or to gather some ideas. We're going to look at using the recording tools to capture our voices. We're going to look at some preset, pre-built loops to add some kind of jingles, sound effects, etc. to the podcast. We're going to cover editing skills, so trimming dead sound, splitting clips, duplicating different settings that we have available to us. And then the key thing at the end is, once we've done all those things, how do we now share that podcast with other people to listen to? Because that's what we need to do to make it authentic and purposeful. How do we now share this wider? So hopefully we'll end up with something like this.
If you had a time machine, where would you go?
I'd go back to the time of the dinosaurs. Or maybe I'd travel far into the future and see what life on Mars is like.
So we're essentially going to go through a session and build up something like that, okay? And you can apply this to any context that you'd like. It might be that in humanities, you're creating a podcast to inform or to argue a particular point. It might be that in literacy, you're doing a podcast to really think about how you would want to demonstrate understanding of a particular topic or discuss and argue a particular point. It might be that you want to create a radio jingle or radio podcast to be able to advertise and promote a particular idea. Loads and loads of examples of how podcasting can be used in the classroom to develop those oracy skills. So let's jump straight into it then. If you've got your iPad in front of you, if you want to open that up now, and we're going to need to look for a couple of apps. But first of all, what I'd like to do is just show you, for younger learners, if you don't want to go into the full GarageBand suite and create a proper podcast, if you want to just develop that ability to have a device, capture a conversation, then that can be done using the Voice Memos app. So Voice Memos is a free out-of-the-box app for iPad, and you can see there you've got the logo here on the left-hand side, what that looks like, and I've got it here on my iPad as well. Now, very simply, if you've got Voice Memos, you can open that up. It's a really, really simple interface for learners to engage with. All they need to know in the bottom left-hand corner here is that they've got the record button. They can click on that record button, and then all they need to do then is start talking. So as I'm talking, then it will capture everything that I'm saying and doing. And then when they finished asking a question or answering a question, they can then just click the pause button at the bottom, read their next note or have a conversation about what they're going to do next, and then click on resume again to carry on capturing their voice as they go through. So really simple entry-level voice capture for learners in the early years. Now they can then play that back. My sound wanted to work this afternoon, doesn't want to work. So they can play that back and they can listen to their recording. But also what's really nice when you've got some of the newer iPads is in the top right-hand corner, you've got a transcript as well. So that transcript then will be generated after a little bit of thinking time, and it will then demonstrate and show what the learners have been saying as well as they've been going through. Now, once you're happy and you've finished your little recording and voice notes, just click the done button in the bottom right-hand corner, and then you can see then all of the recordings are available here on the left-hand side. Now I can click on that share tray, and I could either copy that transcript and paste it into a document if I wanted to, or I could save that recording to my files, and then use that as part of a project. They can upload that to Seesaw or to Google Classroom or whatever. But it's very, very simple. There's no additional nuts and bolts to the voice memos app. It's literally just voice capture and then using that as a simple way to demonstrate podcasting from early years perspective. Okay, but I just wanted to share that with you before we jumped into GarageBand so that everyone in your school would have access to this as well. Okay, let's jump into GarageBand then. We're going to start off by looking at planning your podcast and how you can use some of the tools available to you within GarageBand itself. So what I've done tonight, and you can kind of work in your own pace, or you can just follow along as I do it as well, as I've kind of put the steps down the left-hand side just to show you what you need to do, but I'll talk you through it and model it for you here on the screen. As I go through, like I said, if there's any questions, do pop them in the chat and I'll try and answer them the best I can as we go through. So first thing we're going to do, if you press and hold on the GarageBand app on your iPad, you'll get a menu then that pops up. So you can see I've got a number of different options based on the task that I'm about to do. If I was going to create some music, I could click on new tracks or new live loops. But because we're going to do a podcast, we're going to click on this option here that says create new audio recording. Now what that will do is that will open up GarageBand and it will open it then directly to the recording option, my audio recorder, and you'll know that it's capturing the audio because on the left hand side you can see the level there jumping up and down. What we're going to do though, just to kind of support cognitive load within GarageBand, so we're not jumping out from app to app, is we're just going to make our way up to the settings cog here in the top right hand corner. Now, when I open the settings cog, you'll see just down the bottom here, I've got the ability to open up a notepad. Now, what I can do with this notepad is essentially write down any questions or things that I want to cover as part of my podcast. It could be that I add some of my script in here. But what that means is then learners don't need to jump out of GarageBand into another app. They could have it written on their pages or their book in front of them, but they could add some questions in there. So what I'd like you to do is just go up to that settings cog, tap on the notepad option, and then I'd like you to just pop in a question that you might ask yourself as part of your podcast. For my example, I'm just going to use the one on the screen here. So I could just type in, if you had a time machine, where would you go? Okay. Now, obviously, for those learners who struggle with typing, you can use the dictation tool. So your keyboard might open up if you've not got a keyboard attached, and you can click on this dictation tool here, and that will then allow the learners to talk directly into the device and capture everything that they're saying. Now, once they've added in then your question, you could then script your response. So if you had a time machine, where would you go? I would go back in time to see what it was like when Manchester United were still successful. Now, I'm a Man United fan, and I'd like to go back to that time. So that would be my response. I'd put that in there so I can go back and relive the glory days rather than the sad days that we're going through now. So pop in your question and your answer, okay? And then once you've done that, you can click back onto settings here. You can click on your settings cog, and then that will disappear. And so you can go back and forth to that as many times as you like, just to help your thinking and again, to manage that cognitive load of the learners as they're going through it. So I'll just give you 30 seconds, if you haven't done so already, to open our settings cog, click on Notepad, and just pop in a question and a response, because we're going to use that in a second to record some of our examples as we go through. Okay, so that's part one. We've done the first part. We've used that notepad to capture some of the thoughts and feelings. Next thing we're going to do now is we're going to move on to learning how to record our voice, how we can play that back then, and how we can edit that using the audio recorder within GarageBand. So let's prepare ourselves to record by making sure we've got the right presets available. Now you'll notice currently on your screen in front of you, you should have two presets. So you've got the fun preset and you've got the studio preset. It will also then say here in the center to point your iPad towards the sound you want to record. So I'm just going to click OK and just demo some of the things that you you can see on the screen in front of you. Now, on the fun side, these are all filters that can be added to a pupil's voice, so that when they're recording, then it plays it back with a kind of funny filter added to it. So you can see you've got robot, dreamy, a bullhorn, telephone, some extreme tuning, a chipmunk, some sci-fi kind of things, and then you've got a monster and a robot as well. Now, the children really do enjoy playing around with those different filters and hearing them speak in different ways. That might be a really powerful thing to do if you've got learners taking on a particular role in a podcast or a radio play or something along those lines. They can add those little filters in to just add that little bit of fun and creativity as well. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how we can set up the microphone so it's fine-tuned for a podcast style recording. Now, one thing to note with your iPad is that your microphone is on the opposite end to the charging port. So on my device here, this is where my kind of charger is. At this end of my device then is where the microphone sits, okay? So what I'd like you to do is tap onto Studio there for me, and you can see at the moment I've still got Monster selected. If we click onto Monster for me, you then get a range of different kind of presets that you can use. On this menu on the left hand side, you can scroll up and down if there's more options. I'm going to select vocals. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom and I'm going to select this option here that says narrator. Now you'll notice now instantly that these settings underneath my device have changed. And then when I click done, I can now edit or twist these different knobs around to change the output or the recording quality of what I'm about to do. Okay, so once you've done that, we now need to think about our input level. And what we're going to do is we're going to play around with this kind of slider here on the left-hand side to make sure that as I'm recording, that green meter or that green bar is about halfway up. If I'm speaking too loud, you'll see that it jumps all the way up to the kind of orange and red levels, which I don't want it to do. So what I can do is I can just adjust this slider now so that as I'm talking, that green bar is going halfway up on the left-hand side. Now, one thing you'll need to think about, obviously, in a classroom environment, lots of people recording podcasts at the same time can be quite challenging, and the voices and noise will kind of be captured by those people around them. So depending on your school setup, you might have some kind of safe spaces for learners to go to and have that opportunity to record their voices. But another really interesting way I've seen this done, and a really cost-effective way of doing this, is in every school I've ever been into, everyone has got A4 printers, A4 printing paper, and those boxes that those big reams of A4 paper come in. Now, if you keep those boxes and you can use them in the classroom, you can slide the iPad inside that box and it creates almost like a mini sound studio. So it muffles the sound from around the classroom and then it just keeps the sound within the box in the iPad recording. So it helps, first of all, with the quality of the recording, but also for those learners who are quite anxious or don't want to engage in that process, they can almost kind of put their head inside the box and capture their voice that way as well. So it's a really nice way of doing it, and it doesn't cost you anything extra because everyone's buying those A4 printer boxes. So if you've got any lying around, do grab hold of one. Okay, as I've been talking, hopefully you've managed to adjust your slider there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to almost start recording and have a play around with our recording as well. So there's a few steps there on the left-hand side that we need to think about, okay? Obviously, this universal symbol for recording is to start our recording. When I click on that record button, I will get a 4-second countdown with the metronome. And then what I always used to tell the children in my class was to give it another second, just wait, and then start recording the question or their response. And that's just to make sure that they don't cut off the first word by starting too early as well. What you're going to do now, I'm going to ask you to do, is if you can remember your question, brilliant. If you can't, you can just open up your settings cog, go to that notepad there and have that available. I'm going to ask you to record your question, give it a second, and then record your answer. Okay, so if you want to be, if you want to take on 2 roles and put a voice on for the answer, you can do so. But if you don't, just capture it as it is. So I'll just demo that for you as we go through. If you had a time machine, where would you go? I would go back to the time when Manchester United was successful so I could relive the glory days again. Now, once I've finished, I can click the stop button, and you can see now that my recording has now appeared as a region here on the screen. And then once I recorded it, I can press that play button, and I can then re-listen to my recording. And for some reason, the sound that I've captured today isn't coming through, but it's definitely there. I think it's the way I've set my iPad up. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to just spend 30 seconds to record your question and your answer. If you're not happy with it, click on this little button here, which is go to beginning. It'll take the playhead back to the start. Click record again, and then record your question and answer over the top. Once you've done that, if you could just give me a little thumbs up in the chat to say that you've done that, we'll then move on to the next part of the session. If you want to be more exciting and put a different emoji or a GIF or whatever you'd like in the chat to let us know you're done, please do so. So I'll just give you a minute or two to capture that. So we're going to move on then. Hopefully now you've had a chance to record your question and your answer, and you've got this then blue region here that has captured your recording on your device. What you can then do on the top left here is you can click on that tracks button, and that will just get rid of your microphone. What you'll all be able to see then is just the recording that's been captured by there. Okay. So I've already covered that. Let's move on to the next bit. How can we now edit the interview process as we're going through? Okay, so you've recorded your first question, you've recorded your answer in one bit. How do we now capture and edit that into different parts? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is on the left-hand side here, where you've got your microphone, if you just tap on that, what that will then do is it will open up a menu. So I can delete my recording if I'd like. I can duplicate it. I could rename it, so it could be the person who's speaking on that line. I can merge two different things. I can automate things. I can show it in a grid, and I can also change the icon that's showing. What we're going to do is we're just going to tap that duplicate option just by there. And what that will now do is it will copy the settings from the first microphone onto the second layer of the track. So you've now got the same settings on layer 1 and on layer 2. Okay, so if you could do that, tap on the microphone, just to show that again, tap on the microphone here, and then click on that duplicate option for me, please. Now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to kind of like split our region into two different parts. Okay, so if you've recorded your question and answer, what I'd like you to do is click play to listen back to your question, and then when the question finishes, just select that stop button. Okay, so you've now got your playhead, which is this vertical line here, in between your question and your answer. Okay, so if you could do that for me, please. Okay, now once you've done that, where you've got that playhead, that vertical playhead, if you just tap on the region like so, I'll just show you what it looks like when I use the fingers there. What you'll see again now is that you've got another set of options. You've got cut, copy, delete, rename, select all, loop, or split. What we're going to do is we're just going to select that split option. Now, when we select split, what you'll see is those little scissors appear, and I quite like this feature within GarageBand, because what children now need to physically do is drag the scissors down the region like so, and physically cut it into two pieces. So by drawing that line, it's cutting the region into two separate pieces. Once you've done that, you can now basically press and hold and drag your answer part of the section onto the second layer below. Okay, so I'm just going to hit the undo button, which is this one by here, just to show you that process again. So I've pressed play, I've stopped it in between my question and my answer. I'm going to tap on the region like so to open up the menu. I'm going to click split and then physically use those scissors to cut the two pieces in half. And then if I press and hold on this region, I can drag it down then onto the second layer. And then you can check that all works by just playing it from the beginning again. And what you should still have is your question and then your answer following as well. So if I just give you 30 seconds to do that, and once you've done that, then again, if you could just give us a thumbs up or a high five or whatever in the chat, just to let me know you're ready to move on to the next part of the session, please. Okay, so now we've done that, we've kind of started to build up then a bit of a layer, and you could do this multiple times now. Now we could go on to the next question, ask the next question, and answer, split that into two, put it on the different tracks. But we're going to keep it simple today by just playing around with this recording, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to start thinking about how we can add in Apple loops to kind of enhance our recording, give it maybe a little bit of a jingle or a background track that kind of just sits behind what they're saying, some sound effects. Hi, Peter, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, so we can add some sound effects, some background music, or some little jingles in at the start. So we're going to use the Apple Loops library, which is a really, really cool library built into Apple GarageBand that gives you all of these different things. So what I'd like you to do, we're going to explore the sound library first, where you get loads of free kind of samples for you. On the top right hand side of your screen by here, you should see you've got the Apple Loops browser. Looks like a little bit like a loop-de-loop on a roller coaster. If you just select that for me, there you go, sorry. If you click on Apple Loops there, and then click on this option here that says Get More Apple Loops, it will then take you through to the sound library. Now, within the sound library, there are loads of different kind of like content packs that you can see by here. And you've also got then these packs that have been provided by actual music producers. And you can download those and use those for more like DJ house kind of music. What we're going to do is we're going to select this See All option here on the right-hand side. And then I'd like you to find the sound pack called Toy Box, which is this one here. It's blue one with a little monkey and a rocket on. Now, if you select that, and then where mine says downloaded at the moment, you should get the word get if you haven't got it already. If you just tap the get button, it will then download those loops to your device. Okay, now you shouldn't need to ask any external providers to do that for you. That should just happen because it's already within the app. So if you just hit the get button for me, download those. It shouldn't take too long. There's not a huge amount of stuff to download on there. And as that's downloading, just to show you, there are again a load of other different packs in here that kind of give you different feelings and different emotions, etc. You don't need to be a musician really to use GarageBand. I think that's the key thing to note. But you can see in here there's kind of rock packs, you've got percussion packs, you've got traditional music from around the world, you've got these kind of like beat sequencer packs and transition effects. Loads of different ways to use GarageBand to kind of be really innovative and creative as well. So hopefully, as I've been kind of rambling on there, you've managed to download those sound packs. Now, once you've downloaded the Toy Box sound pack, we're just going to click back onto Sound Library here in the top left-hand corner. And then we're going to click Done in the top right-hand corner. And that should then return us back to our recording that we were playing around with earlier. Okay, so hopefully you're all in the same place. If I'm going too fast, just let me know in the chat. But I'm going to presume that we're all up to speed now on having that Toy Box pack available for us. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and find the right sound, the sounds that we need then to sit behind our podcast. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this playhead is at the beginning of our podcast. And two ways that we can do that. We can literally just drag that across like so, or I can click on this Go to Beginning button and it will just shoot it back to the start of the podcast for me. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to click on the Loops button by here. Okay. And then a couple of things that I can do. Obviously on the steps there's asked you to search the Apple field, but just to show you how you can play around with them. I've got three filters by here. I've got the instruments filter. I can select that and just filter by different instruments. Okay. I've got the genres filter, so I can select a genre that I'm particularly looking for. So I could be looking for sound effects. So if I select sound effects, it will now give me all the different sound effects that you would have downloaded as part of the Toy Box sound pack. Or I can also select the descriptors option. So I can select different types of description and it will give me then the sounds back that match the sound that I'm looking for potentially. Okay, so that's one way to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to just use the search bar by here and we're going to search for the planetarium melody. I've given you something really easy to spell. Okay, so planetarium melody. So if you search for that there and hit the enter button, what you'll then be given is all these different melodies that you can use within your podcast. Again, you could do this with any melody on there as well. Now, if I want to preview what the melody sounds like with my voice, I can press the play button up here, like so. I could then go into my loops and I can just click on one. And what it will do then is it will play the loop back with my voice in the background, and I can see whether that fits or not. Okay. And again, I could just choose another one and play that back. Apologies, the sound's not coming through. Don't know why. It's just having a moment. But on your device, hopefully you'll be able to hear that for you. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a minute or two to just listen to some of those loops. And then if you're happy with the loop that you've chosen, all you need to do is press and hold on the one that you want and drag that across to your timeline here. Okay, so just to show you that again, I can go into my Apple loop, click on it to preview it, and then if I'm happy, press and hold and drag it across onto my timeline like so. So you should then end up with your question on the first layer, your answer on the second layer, and then your background music sitting on the third layer like so. So I'm just going to give you a minute to preview some of the different loops. And then when you found one that you particularly like, drag that across onto your layout there and we'll be good to go. Okay, again, as always, if you could just let me know in the chat that you're up to speed, that'll be really, really appreciated. And then we will crack on with the next part. And the one challenge you'll have with this is that the children in your class will love to listen to as many different ones as they want. So as I always recommend, as part of the kind of that DCF around the producing strand, you've got those three elements. The first one being the planning element. Perhaps give them that opportunity to plan out what loops they're going to use before you go into recording, so that when they get to the recording and building up their podcast, they've almost got that thought in their mind about the quality of what they're talking about and the oracy skills, rather than focusing on which loop sounds best at which point. Okay. We're flying along here, we're doing really well. Okay, so now we're on to kind of editing it. And again, you could layer this up in as many different ways as you like. You could have, like I said, as many different narrators talking on different levels. You could have more than one kind of different sound effect coming in at different points. So we'll have a look at how we do that now as part of the editing process. So the next thing we're going to do is think about now trimming our regions, getting rid of dead space. Okay, so that's the silence that we often hear at the start and at the end of our recording, and it's going to help it to become a more polished process. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to start with my question here. I'm just going to tap on the region like so. And when I tap on it, you'll notice then I get those two handles that appear at each end of the region. Now, those of you who've used iMovie before, very, very similar skill. All I need to do now is press and hold on the region on the left-hand side there, and I can then just drag that across to trim out any dead space in my recording. So you could listen back to it and figure out what bits you need to trim out, and then you can go to the beginning, and then you can go to the end as well. Okay. Now, obviously, my sound is playing up a bit today, but I can see visually, just looking at the region there, where the dead space was, because I've got that flat line of no sound. So what I'd like you to do with any recordings that you've done now is just trim out any dead space. Okay, so I've done that on my question, just to show you that again with my answer. Tap on the region, go to the handle at the end, drag that across to get rid of any dead space there. And then do the same at the end now, so that my regions are getting smaller and I'm getting rid of that dead space. Okay, so 30 seconds to do that, shouldn't take too long. So now that you've kind of trimmed your regions and you've got rid of any of that dead space, we can actually now start playing around and moving those regions around. Okay, so as you can see on the screen there, if I just tap onto one of these regions and I press and hold, I can essentially now just drag this around and place it where I want it to go. So say, for example, now I wanted to have a little bit of a delay at the start of my podcast for the music to play as like a little jingle, I could just move that along like so. And again, then I could move my response along a bit as well, so that I can use this kind of this effect then to create like a little bit of a jingle opening. Then my question comes in, then there's a little bit of a gap, and then there is my response. Now, if I wanted to add in some sound effects to go between the question and the answer, I could jump back into my Apple loops. I could go looking for a particular sound effect. So I wonder if there's like a football, because mine was a football answer. No, there isn't. What about soccer? Is this American? No. Let's go for a cheer. No, I'm just gonna have a search in my genres here. So say, for example, I wanted a sound effect now, and I wanted to bring that in. I'm just going to use an alarm. I could drag that across into there. And I could have that as part of my podcast as well. So I could just have that in there as a little sound effect as I go through. So you can see you can add as many layers as you like to this as you go through. So hopefully now you've managed to kind of move your regions around and move them into the right place. And the next thing that we need to do, and your learners will need to do, is focus on now the mixing levels. So making sure that when you are talking and the narrators and the people in the conversation are having that conversation, that chat, we can hear them clearly, particularly if you've got that underlying sound. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is now on the left-hand side, there's two things you can do. First thing you can do is you can take this little handle here and you can drag that out to open up your mixing levels. Or what you can do is you can go to the mixing levels option here. You can tap on that and that will open up a few more menus. Okay. Now, if I was to play back my podcast now, I'll be able to hear everything being played to me, and I'll be able to try and figure out then whether or not the sounds that are playing are sitting quite nicely or not. And then what I can do is I can select whichever one that I want. So say, for example, now I want my background sound to be a bit quieter. I just select my background sound there, my loop, and then I use this track volume slider to just slide that down to turn the volume down so that when I play it back, my voice now is the most prominent sound in my podcast, and then that underground background noise is a bit quieter then and sits behind the voice that I'm using as well. So what I'd like you to do is just preview your podcast or your very, very short recording. Play around with those levels. Maybe you might need to turn your microphone up a little bit and turn your background sound down. And again, once you're happy with that, pop a little thumbs up in the chat for me, and we'll move on then to the next part of the process. Now, with these podcasts, you can make them as simple or sophisticated as you'd like. And I think sometimes when we say podcast to a teacher in your school, they automatically think that it has to be a 30-minute podcast discussing all the things in the world. It doesn't have to be. You know, this could be a minute and a half, 2 minutes long of just pupils having that high quality opportunity to discuss, to share ideas that's different to our traditional, here's a PowerPoint presentation, stand in front of the class and just share your ideas. Okay, so this can be used as simply or as sophisticatedly as you'd like within that curriculum. And if I refer you back to those skills within those progression maps, definitely go back and review those as well. Okay, so we've done it now. We've gone through. You've built up a podcast, and like I said, we've done a very simple just question and answer, but this could be a conversation, a back and forth between 2 or 3 people. But those skills of editing and trimming and moving those regions around will be applied then to a more sophisticated approach. So the next thing we need to do now, because this is always the question in schools, is how do we evidence this? How do we share this with the wider population? So once you have finished your podcast, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rename it Good Digital Citizen, making sure we hit those interacting and collaborating strands, the DCF. So if we go to the Files button here in the top left-hand corner, My Songs, it will take you then back into your file structure where all of your previous GarageBand recordings are captured. As you can see, I'm not a very good digital citizen here because I've left mine as song 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What we're going to do is if you touch and hold on the project you've just worked on until the menu pops up, we can then rename our podcast like so. So we can tap on that rename button and we can then pop in a name and rename that. Okay, and really, really useful. So if you're on shared iPads as an example, and you're just going off to another class for the afternoon and coming back to you, people know whose they are. Okay. Now, once you've renamed your podcast, we're then going to think about how we export it. So again, we're going to just tap and hold until that menu pops up. But this time I'd like you to click on the share option. Okay. Now, once you select share, you'll get three options. You'll get the song option. You get the ringtone, so you can create a ringtone for your iPad or your iPhone if you really wanted to. Or you get the project option. Now, the project option might be useful if, for example, you're working on shared iPads, you've done half of a podcast in the morning and the iPads need to go to another classroom. The learners could export that as a project, so it'll export as a GarageBand project, and they could then airdrop that to you on your class iPad as an example, so that they're available then to reshare with them when you come back around to it. Okay, so that might be a useful option for you. We're going to select the song option, okay? And then what you get once you select the song option is all the different kinds of quality that you can export in. We don't need to go anything higher than high quality. These here are kind of the qualities that we expect to see in an Apple Music or Spotify kind of recording. Okay. Now, once you've done that, you're going to tap on the share button here in the top right-hand corner. That's not yet done though, okay? You've clicked on share, and in this menu, we're going to click on the option here that says save to files. Okay. Now, once you've selected save to files, this will open up the internal management system on your iPad. I would then ask learners to select on my iPad and save that into their GarageBand folder. Okay, you can select save then in the top right hand corner, and that will then save that track. You can see that'll save that track then to your iPad. Now, from here, there are multiple things that you can do with that track. You could take that and upload that to Google Classroom as an example, if you use Google Classroom. It could be attached to an assignment. It could be uploaded to Teams. Or I know lots of schools use Seesaw as a platform. So you could jump across to Seesaw, like so. Okay. And if I just delete that as one I was using earlier. And your learners then could click on this Add to Portfolio option here. Click on the Upload option in the bottom left-hand corner. Click on Browse. And then they'll automatically see their most recent ones here, which is this one. Or I can go into my iPad, go to my GarageBand folder, and I can see my podcast by here. Once I click open then, that will then be uploaded as a little soundbite to my iPad. The learners at this point then could use the pen features to write a little review or a little evaluation of their podcast. And then all they need to do then, as they normally would, is upload that by clicking on the green check button. That will then upload to Seesaw. They can then add that to their different file, put it into a folder if they need to, and then that is then available via Seesaw. Okay, so that's a simple way of doing that. But you could also replicate that process then via Google Classroom by just uploading it to an assignment or to Google Drive. And then similarly, that could be done on OneDrive or on Teams as well. So whichever platform you're using in your school, it's really easy to upload from your iPad into that shared space that you can then share that as you would normally do with your learning community as well. So that has been a little bit of a whistle-stop tour on how to sort of develop oracy skills using GarageBand on the iPad.